There's a specific feeling that happens in your body before your mind catches up. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself with a clear thought like, this person is lying to me, or I'm being used. It's quieter than that. It shows up as a small tightness in your chest, a hesitation before you respond, a sense that something just shifted in the room but you can't name what it was, and usually you ignore it. You tell yourself you're being paranoid, overthinking, or too sensitive. You rationalize the moment away because the alternative, trusting that first feeling, means admitting something you're not ready to admit yet. But here's what's actually happening in those 10 seconds. Your nervous system is picking up on something your conscious mind hasn't processed yet. It's noticing a mismatch. The words sound caring, but the tone has an edge. The gesture looks generous, but it comes with a weight attached. Your body registers this before your thoughts do, and that's the window where the truth is available to you if you're willing to notice it. Most people miss it, not because they're careless, but because they've been trained to dismiss their own perceptions when they conflict with what someone else is presenting. Maybe you grew up in a home where your feelings were corrected, where you were told you didn't actually feel what you felt, so you learned to second-guess yourself. You learned that other people's version of reality was more reliable than your own. And now, when someone manipulates you, you're already primed to doubt the very instinct that would protect you. Manipulation doesn't look like what you think it does. It's not always loud or aggressive or obvious. The most effective manipulation is gentle. It sounds like concern. It looks like help. It comes wrapped in language that makes you feel like you're the one who's confused, mistaken, or being difficult. The person manipulating you doesn't need to raise their voice. They just need to make you feel slightly off balance, slightly wrong, slightly like you owe them something you can't quite name. Think about the last time someone asked you a favor, and you said yes even though everything in you wanted to say no. What happened in the moment before you agreed? There was probably a comment, a sigh, a facial expression that communicated disappointment or subtle judgment. Maybe they said, "I thought you'd understand," or "It's fine, I'll figure it out myself." And in that moment, you felt it, the pressure. Not direct pressure, implied pressure. The kind that doesn't force you but makes you feel like refusing would say something bad about who you are. So you said yes. Not because you wanted to, but because the alternative felt like proving them right about something you couldn't afford to prove. That's manipulation. It's the feeling of being moved without realizing someone else is doing the moving, and the person who manipulated you will never acknowledge that they guided you there. They'll act like it was entirely your decision, which makes it even harder to recognize what happened. Here's the thing people don't talk about enough. Manipulation works because it targets your specific vulnerabilities. It finds the place where you're already unsure of yourself and presses there. If you struggle with feeling selfish, the manipulator will frame your boundary as selfishness. If you're afraid of being seen as cold, they'll position their request as a test of your warmth. You end up betraying your own instincts to preserve the relationship or avoid being seen as the problem. And you know this feeling. You've been in conversations where someone asks you to explain yourself in a way that makes your reasons sound inadequate, no matter what you say. Where the other person positions themselves as reasonable and you as defensive. Where your no is treated as negotiable, but their expectation is presented as fixed. You walk away feeling drained, confused, like you just lost an argument you didn't know you were having. That's someone rearranging the architecture of the conversation so that you end up where they wanted you all along. The 10-second window is before all of that. It's the moment when their sentence lands and something in you reacts before your mind constructs a story about it. That reaction might feel like a small recoil, a flash of anger, a wave of guilt, or a sudden tiredness. That's the signal. And the reason it matters is because once you move past it, once you start explaining it away, you lose access to your own clarity. You enter their frame. You start defending your reality instead of trusting it. But noticing the signal doesn't mean you'll always act on it. Sometimes you recognize manipulation and still go along with it. Not because you're weak, but because the cost of resisting feels too high. Maybe this person is your boss, your parents, or your partner. Maybe confronting the manipulation would mean confronting the entire relationship, and you're not ready for that. So you let the moment pass. You tell yourself, it's not that bad. You choose the discomfort of compliance over the uncertainty of resistance. And if you do this enough times, you stop noticing the 10-second window at all. Your body stops sending you the signal because you've trained it to understand that you're not going to listen anyway. This is how people end up in relationships where they've lost track of their own preferences, their own sense of what they actually want. Not because they were forced, but because they were slowly guided away from themselves, and at some point they stopped checking in with the part of them that knew. You might be thinking about someone specific right now, someone who has a way of making you feel small without ever saying anything directly cruel, someone whose needs always seem to become the priority, even in conversations that started about you. And maybe you've been telling yourself it's not manipulation because they're not trying to hurt you. But care and manipulation can coexist. Someone can genuinely believe they love you and still use tactics that erode your ability to trust yourself. The hardest part is that manipulation often mimics intimacy. It looks like someone who's really interested in you, who asks deep questions. But there's a difference between curiosity and extraction. Curiosity leaves space for you. Extraction uses what you share to map your weak points. A manipulator learns where you've been hurt before and then uses that information to shape how they approach you. They remember what makes you feel guilty, what makes you feel needed, what makes you feel afraid of being abandoned. But you didn't sign up to be managed. You signed up to be known. And there's a difference. Being known means someone sees you and lets you be yourself. Being managed means someone sees you and adjusts your behavior to fit their needs. It's subtle. It can take years to see the distinction. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's what the 10-second window offers you. The chance to see it early, before it gets buried under explanation or guilt. So what do you do with that awareness? You don't have to confront anyone immediately. You just have to stop dismissing yourself. When you feel that shift, that small tightening or hesitation, pause. Even if you don't act on it in the moment, acknowledge it. Say to yourself, I noticed that. Because recognition is the first step toward reclaiming your own reality. Manipulation relies on you not trusting yourself. The moment you start trusting yourself again, even quietly, the dynamic begins to shift, and it will be uncomfortable. Because the people who are used to shaping your responses won't like it when you stop being as predictable. They'll escalate, or withdraw, or tell you you've changed. And maybe you have. Maybe the version of you they're upset about losing was the version that prioritized their comfort over your clarity. You're allowed to notice when something doesn't feel right. You're allowed to trust that feeling, even if you can't articulate why yet. You're allowed to protect yourself from people who make you feel like protecting yourself is an overreaction. None of this makes you unkind. It makes you honest. The 10 seconds are always there. Every time someone tries to move you away from your own knowing, there's a moment where you feel it. The question is whether you've been taught to honor that moment or dismiss it. And if you've been dismissing it your whole life, it's going to take time to learn a different response. But that's the work. Not fixing the relationship, not confronting the manipulator, not even leaving necessarily. Just learning to stay with yourself when the pressure comes. And maybe this is where you realize that a lot of the confusion you've been carrying isn't confusion at all. It's clarity that's been argued with. It's knowing that's been corrected. It's instinct that's been overruled so many times you stopped recognizing it as instinct. But it's still there, waiting for you to stop explaining it away. If this sounded familiar, if something in you recognized itself here, leave a comment about what you've been through and how you felt. And if this helped you see something you couldn't name before, leave a like. Share it with someone who might need to see it too. Subscribe if you want more of these conversations. Thanks for being here. See you next time.